Welcome to Dodgers Dogs. As part of the Dodgers Daily Network, Casey Porter here, joined by Austin Brubaker. And again, we want to keep everybody in Southern California in our thoughts and prayers as they battle wildfires. That is a horrific situation out there on the West Coast. So, Austin, I bring you in with that bad news, but other than that, how are you this Friday evening?
Yeah, I'm in a situation where I'm very much blessed. Still thinking, still praying for everyone that's out there in Southern California. Obviously, with Casey and I, we are not from California. We don't live in that area, so we're not affected by what's going on. But we know many of you are, and many people tuning in who are phenomenal Dodgers fans and great people in general are being deeply affected by that. So we want to make sure that we let you know that we're thinking of you guys. We're praying for you. And if there's anything that we can do to help, please reach out. Please reach out to and listen to the authorities that are out there and try to stay as safe as possible. We want to make sure that get through this. And then what's on the other side, we'll try to help rebuild as best as we can.
Well, I got the semifinal game here on my screen on the right. I got you on my screen in the middle. I got the wonderful Dodgers Dogs on my screen on the left in terms of the chat. And then I've got my beautiful bride of 25 years in real person that I get to look at. So this is a pretty good night for me. I've got it going on pretty good here. So, hey, we have talked a lot about the Dodgers 40 and 26-man roster. Probably won't talk as much about that tonight. But before we get into it, wanted to mention tomorrow at 10 o'clock Pacific, I'm releasing a launch angle video on Eric Swan. Eric Swan is a right-handed pitcher in the Dodgers organization that is getting a lot of attention. And if you've been paying attention at Dodgers Daily, we interviewed him about a month ago. And then we also talked to Sean Coyne, his pitching coach at Rancho Cucamonga, who called him a generational arm talent. So it's about a 12-minute feature. It's going to kind of combine some of the comments from Sean Coyne. You're going to hear from Eric Swan himself, and then he's going to take you through all of his pitch grips. He's going to talk you through how he sequences his pitch mix, and then you're also going to get to see him actually execute those sequences and that pitch mix in a game. So it's a really good feature. I'm excited about it. So tomorrow at 10 a.m., if you missed that, I'm going to replay that Eric Swan launch angle feature as part of the Down on the Farm segment Sunday night as well. Then also, I'm going to release Peyton Martin's interview on Tuesday. And then Monday, we've got DC Dylan Campbell coming. And then Wednesday, just got through talking to Griffin Lockwood Powell. GLP, what a wonderful young man. He's coming Wednesday. And then Robo, Justin Robleski, we're going to talk to him Tuesday too. We're going to release that one on Thursday. So cram-packed full of content here at Dodgers Dogs as part of the Dodgers Daily Network.
Oh, man, you hear that? And I know from here in the state of Michigan, there's a lot of either former loons or future loons on that list. So there's a lot to be excited about. But it's not just former loons or future loons. It's also future Dodgers as well. And getting to know them early in this process is super cool to be able to do that. So all of these, super looking forward to them. The one tomorrow, Eric Swan, I'm excited to see him potentially during this upcoming season. That's going to be special. I can't wait for baseball to start here in a couple months.
Yeah. So we have a wonderful crowd logging in. Gregory, Craig Osterberg, Daniel Berry Sports Highlight, Chuck Huddleston, John Causey has joined the house, Showtime LA. Wonderful, wonderful Dodgers Dogs out there. So, hey, let's dive into this, Austin. I know you've taken a little bit of a look at it. What we're going to do tonight, we've talked ad nauseum about it. When we can get into whatever roster talk and whatever we want to answer or talk about whatever conversation topic that you want to talk about out there in the chat. But as far as what we're bringing to the table tonight, we have hammered home the 40 and 26. There has not been any different movement since we have talked last. So we've talked about this dynasty the Dodgers we think are building. So we kind of want to put that to the test tonight and compare the Dodgers roster to all the other NL West teams. I know the Padres are still very good. The Diamondbacks added Corbin Burns. San Francisco seems like they're just flailing away, making whatever move they can. The Mets, Steve Cohen, seems like they have an unlimited pocketbook. You know the Phillies are going to be good, and so are the Braves. So we're going to kind of compare the Dodgers roster to all of that competition in the National League. So, Austin, take it away.
Yeah, I'm going to do my best that I can. I haven't had all the time in the world to be able to research this with work and everything, but it should be a fun, exciting venture to be able to talk through a lot of this because there is a lot of competition that the Dodgers are going to have to face. I would think right now at this moment, and I don't think this is an extreme statement to make. I think the National League is better than the American League, or at least the top of the National League is better than the top of the American League. Not just because the Dodgers won the World Series and they're in the National League, but because of the competition that they are facing and going against each other right now. We're starting to see potentially the Astros taking a little bit of a step back with Kyle Tucker and Alex Bregman going out. We saw the Yankees lose out on a Juan Soto. So there might be a little bit of a drop off, even from what the difference was between the National League and American League, which means the competition that the Dodgers are going to go up against is pretty extreme, pretty tough. Now, to start this off, and I'm not telling you which team that this is right now, just because I want you and I want the fans to be able to kind of think through this. 2024 season. There were, let's call it top four, because I think this team was tied for third place. So if you had to guess what the top four offenses in the game of baseball during the 2024 season, who do you think those teams were?
Only National League?
Both National League and American League, a major league combined, or
Yankees,
both major league.
Yankees
are on
Diamondbacks, Padres, Dodgers.
It was Yankees, it was the Dodgers, it was the Orioles, and then it was the Diamondbacks.
Yes.
The Diamondbacks had, I believe, a team OPS plus of 115. They scored a lot of runs, which means their offense was one of those that was working out really, really good for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Now, granted, for their roster, and this is extremely good news for the Dodgers, they did lose out on one key piece. Christian Walker is not a Arizona Diamondback. He is a Houston Astro.
God.
And so
he killed the Dodgers.
Yes. Oh, yeah. No, he was one of those guys. You got to
I don't know if he was any good or not. I don't know because I didn't watch him play other than the games that he played against the Dodgers. Yes. But the games that I saw him in, he was like freaking Babe Ruth, man.
Yes.
No, I mean, that dude just killed the Dodgers.
Oh, he was extremely good with what he was able to do. He was replaced by former Guardians first baseman Josh Naylor. He joined the team with a trade to Arizona, so he's going to be taking over the first base position. But Christian Walker, good news for Dodgers fans, he will not play the Dodgers unless the Dodgers play the Houston Astros, which is where he is at right now. But what they have done during this offseason is addressed an area of need pretty significantly. That is the pitching realm. Well, Arizona, who was following the 2023 season, the defending National League champions, had a 115 OPS plus. Their pitching was not up to par at all. They were 26th in ERA plus last season. So they very much needed to address that.
Kind of stop you there. Going into the playoffs there in 2023, their bullpen especially had been really shaky. And then they made some moves there at the trade deadline. And it just kind of like the Dodgers. Well, the Dodgers were pretty good for most of the year. But, I mean, it's like they made some trade deadline moves. And then their bullpen just all of a sudden went from not good at all to like one of the best as far as for a short period of time. So I think that could be last year as far as the pitching regression for the Diamondbacks. That could have been predicted because I think some of what they did in 2023, at least with their bullpen, some of their starters like Fott that didn't have a whole lot of experience, I think there was some variability there that you could predict maybe some regression. And maybe they caught some lightning in a bottle to end 2023. So that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, so not particularly surprising. Now they're starting pitching, at least on paper, is starting to look really good, and it is really good.
Who are their starters?
Because you talk about Brandon Pfaadt, he's their number 5 starter.
Wow.
Their current starters are Corbin Burns, Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Eduardo Rodriguez, and then Brandon Pfaadt. And then they also still have Jordan Montgomery, which I think they're looking for some sort of trade in order to get off of that contract. That is a deep.
And they have a good offense.
They have a very good offense. They still have a couple of guys in the bullpen, including the guy that we had talked about as a potential trade candidate back when he was with the Miami Marlins, AJ Puck. He's in the back end of that bullpen, and he was able to, after the early waves of the season with very severe walk issues, was able to start to put a lot of the pieces together. Another interesting thing about Arizona and their offense, and this is something that I'm actually just noticing basically right now, their offensive style is starting to represent or look a little bit more like a little bit more like San Diego's in a way. And what I mean by that is when we were doing the preview shows for Dodgers and San Diego, when that playoff series was happening, one of the very clear things that we talked about the San Diego Padres, and this was apparent, is they were a team that did not strike out offensively, or at least struck out a lot less than all other teams in baseball. They were if you were ranking it 1 to 31 being the most strikeouts and 30 being the least, they had the least amount of strikeouts as an offense in the game of baseball by almost 100 less than the next best team, San Diego, did. And if you look at Arizona and a lot of their guys in their starting lineup right now, you're talking about almost every single guy and just missing one with a strikeout percentage less than 20%. You're talking about 19, 18, 16, 18, 15, a couple more 15s. You're talking about a lineup that's going to be put the ball in play a little bit, which is going to keep this offense, I think, really rolling for Arizona. So what makes Arizona dangerous this upcoming season is they had an offense that already was top 5 in the game of baseball that is going to put the ball in play, which you would anticipate that to continue to have a little bit more success during this upcoming season as well. They also have a lot of different options that they can use in their rotation that is deep as well, and a couple of guys out of the bullpen. So Arizona is going to be one of those where I think we're all anticipating that Dodgers Padres type of situation to come back up. But because Arizona went out and got a Corbin Burns and started to address an area of need, I think they're going to be one of those teams that's going to be sneaky dangerous. And let's not forget what happened during 2023 between the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks. They want to get back to the World Series. They want to get back, and they have some guys that have some experience in the postseason as well. So they're going to be dangerous.
Yeah, so is their bullpen good enough to win it? That'd be my question. That's
gonna be a really good question. That's probably where a lot of this is going to be decided, is how does that back of that bullpen able to play out for Arizona?
So the NL West is stacked because I think Arizona might be better than San Diego, right? And hey, it's baseball and anything can happen. And we've seen in the past that Arizona style can be some sort of kryptonite for the Dodgers. Hasn't been quite as much in the last year or so. So very much so a formidable opponent. And then the Padres, we know just how good they are, especially star-studded at the top. San Francisco, I don't think anybody knows how good they're going to be. I'll say this again. Coach Holt said this all last year. I want the NL West to be very, 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 very good because I want the Dodgers to be pushed. I don't like it when the Dodgers go into coast mode. They go into big picture mode. So as we go through the NL West here, just know that you could disagree with me and leave your comments if you do disagree with me. I am rooting for the NL West to be very good, just for the Dodgers to be the best crop, the best team in a really good crop of teams. That's what I'm rooting for.
Yeah, obviously it would be nice to have the easy path, but sometimes the easy path doesn't train you well enough to get to that point, to get that edge that you need to win postseason games. And I think that's something that we saw the previous couple of seasons with the Dodgers. They went through the regular season pretty easily and were able to roll through opponents. And by the time they got to the postseason, they weren't able to be as sharp as they were and have that edge that they needed to, that sometimes can be born through the course of the regular season. So there's some good competition. I will say with San Diego, they have not spent a whole lot of money during the course of the offseason.
They couldn't.
They don't have really the ability to be able to do so. And last year, they relied pretty heavily, or at least were able to get some pretty key performances based on some players that were able to overachieve some expectations. Like a Jackson Merrill was able to come up and be a fantastic rookie for them during the course of the season. A Jurickson Profar, who I know Dodgers fans are not the biggest fan of, who is not...
Keep bumping your gums.
Yeah, he is not on the Padres right now. He's currently a free agent.
But hey, who made the last out for the Padres against the Dodgers?
That was, I believe, Tatis.
Oh, it was Fernando Tatis Jr. Really, the one that was talking the most shit, made the
I
last
believe
out.
he was. Yeah, I think he was.
Too bad, Fernando. Oh man,
Yeah, but
that just broke my heart. That broke my heart so much that it's still posted to the top of my X feed.
Yeah.
Formerly
Yeah.
Twitter.
Oh, I'm aware that's still on there.
Yeah.
But
Not
Jurickson
coming off anytime soon.
Yeah, Jurickson Profar signed a 1-year, $1 million deal for the 2024 season and went from one of the worst players war-wise in the game of baseball to one of the better players war-wise. Will that turn around, or will they find that turnaround from somewhere happen again? I'm not so exactly sure. And this roster, especially offensively, right now could change. Is pretty thin, because if you look at FanGraphs for their projected lineup for opening day right now, which is not finished, it is still January 10th, but the bottom three are Tirso Ornelas, Luis Campusano, and Iggy Rosario, with the bench Brett Sullivan, Mike Brosseau, Tyler Wade, and Brandon Lockridge. Not exactly super.
It's Iggy Rosario, and I only know that because I saw him 1,000 times with El Paso. That dude's good, man.
Yeah.
Iggy Rosario can freaking play.
Yeah.
Again, he hasn't done it at the major league level yet. That's the point.
So there's a lot of uncertainty towards the bottom of that lineup. Still has a ton of talent at the top half right now with Arias, Tatis, Merrill, Machado, Cronenworth, and Bogarts. And then if you look at the pitching side right now, obviously, I think they're going to be missing Joey Musgrove for the entire upcoming season. So their starting rotation is Dylan Cease, Michael King, and Yu Darvish leading the way. And then Randy Vasquez and Matt Waldron closing out to the back end of the rotation. So they still have.
They will not have Tanner Scott, though, to get Shohei Ohtani out. That's a big deal.
Yes, they do not have Tanner Scott, which means that the bullpen's going to take a little bit of a step back. They still have some guys that can throw some gas. You still have to give them a lot of competitive respect, because they're still a very competitive bunch. And last year during the regular season, they got the best of the Dodgers. So the Dodgers were able to take it over on top when it actually counted the most, both at the end of the regular season when they won the NL West and during the postseason. So I still have a lot of confidence that the Dodgers are the better team. They're the more deep team, which I think through the course of at least the regular season is going to get the Dodgers over the top, over the Padres, but they still have a ton of talent that you have to keep an eye out for.
Yeah. You haven't dove into this real deep, but as far as the roster and the resources they have and the payroll, is Jack Flaherty a threat maybe to go to the Padres? That just seems like a fit to me. Flaherty and the Padres. Southern California guy.
It's tough because I know the Padres, or at least the perception based on a lot of the reporting, is that the Padres are taking a pretty significant step back in the payroll that they're looking for. They have to go ahead and do that. Now, they've already taken so far a pretty giant step back based on the projected payrolls. So right now, or at least last year during the 2024 season, the Padres had a payroll of about 200 and give me just a second. I want to make sure that this is accurate.
The big part of this is just kind of the overall gist of what you're saying is the numbers are what they are, but the overall gist of it to me that I'm getting out of this is that likely Jack Flaherty is a long shot, and then Tanner Scott probably is an absolutely no for them. Those are two huge. Those would be two huge. Of course, they had Tanner Scott to end last year, but if they added those two to the roster, if they had the flexibility financially to add those two, you're talking about significantly bolstering that club. But it sounds to me like, from what you're explaining here, those two are long shots.
Yes, and let me make a little bit of a correction. 2023, they had a payroll of about $255 million, according to FanGraphs. That went down to $169 in 2024, and right now their current projection is about $208. So that's even going up from what it was last year without really going ahead and acquiring much talent at all, which means their payroll is up. I don't anticipate them going out and making some moves for a lot of the top free agents on the market. Yeah. That just would not be my guess. They could look for some trades and be creative. general manager seems to like to make some trades, and he's aggressive with the moves, especially for the younger guys in his system. He's not afraid to make moves like that. So I wouldn't rule that out as a possibility for them to go ahead and make some moves, but that would be the avenue that over the course of the next couple of weeks to months, if they want to upgrade this roster, that's where I would anticipate it becoming, or potentially trading some guys that are currently on roster. We've heard some rumors potentially about a Luis Arias trade. Could be a possibility for them, especially because I think he's coming towards the end of, it's going to be his last year of arbitration during this upcoming season. So that could also be a possibility for San Diego.
Yeah. So right now, if you were to compare San Diego and the Diamondbacks, and I just said, hey, Austin, you have to tell me who's going to be the better team in 2025 between those two, who would you say it would be? I know who I would say.
Yeah. On paper, the more deep team seems to be Arizona.
I agree.
And that's surprising based on the way the 2024 season went, and because of the superstar players that are on the Padres team. On paper, Arizona seems more deep. Now, things don't always play out as they do on paper, and there could be guys that step up for San Diego. But that's just where things stand right now, and it could be a little bit of recency bias based on them signing.
Who has the better top end pitching though, like in a 3-game series?
And
if they faced off in the wild card
in a 3-game series, I think it would be Arizona.
Really? Better than Yu Darvish and those guys, and Michael King and those guys?
Because Yu Darvish is getting another year older. He's already in his late 30s, I think, during this. Yeah, he's going to be entering his age 39 season.
Have you seen any slowdown from him at all? Man, that dude still. I know he didn't pitch well for the Dodgers at all in 2017. I know all that. Yeah. Okay, I get it. But, man, that he's not showing any slowdown, man.
He's still a really good pitcher, and I have a lot of respect for him. At some point, there's going to be a slowdown, though. And one of the difficult things also about the Padres and where they're at, and this is probably good news for Dodgers fans, not the best news unless they are able to find some success over the next couple seasons for Padres fans, is the contracts that they've given out take a lot of their players into their late 30s and even some into their 40s.
They needed to win last year.
They are one of those teams that is not forever going to have a large payroll like the Dodgers are going to have, which means they have to take advantage of certain years. And what was so great about the Dodgers last year is they took that advantage of the year that likely was San Diego's, that they had to take advantage of, because now you're starting to see a Yu Darvish get up there in age. Not only is he entering his age 39
How long is the window for San Diego to even be capable of being the Dodgers?
Well, here's the thing. Here's the next things that I was going to be talking about with Yu Darvish, as he's going to be entering basically his age 39 season. He has 4 years left on his deal. You talk about a Manny Machado who's going to be there until 2033. Same with Xander Bogaerts. You have some other players that are going to be there for a long time.
Well, they won't be there that long, but they'll be getting paid for that long.
You're talking about Jake Cronenworth, who's going to be there until 2030. He's already 31 years old. So a lot of long contracts in order to lower the average annual values for some of these guys. Still really good players. They have to take advantage of the years that they have right now when they still have this opportunity that's so close to them. So it could be one of those things where the Padres are one of those desperate teams that's able to go out there and make a move, or how are they going to respond by the way they got eliminated, which they had a golden opportunity to take advantage and eliminate the Dodgers again and then make that path towards the World Series. Yeah. They did not take advantage of that. And it's going to be a big year for San Diego to see what their future is actually going to look like. So it's up to the Dodgers to be able to try to put as much pressure as they possibly can to make them make decisions.
So do the Dodgers who has the best 3 pitchers? The Dodgers is like just the top 3 pitchers of each club. Who has the best top 3 pitchers? The Dodgers, the Diamondbacks, or the Padres?
I would probably say the Dodgers. If your top 3
now, Yamamoto, Ohtani,
and that's assuming that all of those guys are healthy. Although no, throw Blake Snell in there as well.
Yes, right.
So you have another option to be able to do that. So I think the Dodgers because they also had their choice of what they wanted to do between Blake Snell and a Corbin Burns, and they decided to do a Blake Snell, or at least they preferred that contract.
Yeah, that was more length, I think, of contract than it was picking one over the other. Yeah.
Probably, and I think he probably fits with what the Dodgers like to do, and they like for that swing and miss stuff. I would take the Dodgers rotation at this point compared to those. Arizona's really close in there, and San Diego's is not a bad top 3. There's just not a ton of depth that I see for the Padres roster, especially offensively wise. So
if they're a couple of injuries away from being terrible.
Yeah, if something happens to
the wrong
Jackson
guys,
Merrill or Manny Machado or one of those guys,
or the pitcher, a couple of
those guys, or if another pitcher goes down, it becomes a lot more difficult to see how they're able to maintain the level of success that they've had.
If they had the injuries that the Dodgers had last year, they would have been one of the worst teams in baseball, right?
They would not have been as good as they were.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
So I guess the question now is, maybe we're overlooking the Giants. I don't think we are. What I'm trying to say is I just don't know that anybody has a good judge on what the Giants are right now, just the moves that they're making and that kind of deal. So are the Giants squarely is it clearly defined that the Giants are the 4th worst team in the NL West? Is that clearly defined?
Yeah, I will say that they're not the worst team in the National League West. I think that
Colorado
would probably go to Colorado right now. Yeah. They're very much a younger team. What I will say, there's some things that you could potentially like about the Giants. I think their defense is probably going to be pretty solid. Now, defense doesn't win you a whole lot of games, but is important.
Come on, statistician. Defense and pitching wins lots of games.
Oh, I'm aware, but not as much as the offense is able to win you games.
That's the statistician coming out on you, man.
Oh, I know. But when you have a Matt Chapman who had a really good season this past year, one of his better years that he's had in recent years, put up 5.5 WAR. That's really solid. Combine him and Willy Adames on that left side of the infield. I think that's going to play really well. It is going to have quite a bit of strikeouts. And you look at the roster, basically.
Do you like that left side, Adames and Chapman? I know it sounds good, and they have a name to them, but really, is that really a good? I don't know. I just don't like both of their profiles, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. I will say during the 2024 season, this is one of the things that I do like. Now, we can have a different conversation about projecting and then the length of the contracts, whether that's going to age well. But during the 2024 season, Chapman had 5.5 WAR. Adames had 4.8 WAR. That's pretty good. And if they're able to get anywhere close to that level of standard, it's a combination of both home runs, but also a combination of playing really solid defense, at least from Matt Chapman's angle. So both of them are really solid players. They're really good at what they're able to do. Long term, potentially you could have questions of how long you're able to sustain that level of success, which both of them are. At least Adames is signed to a
Can we start the
deal.
Season tomorrow? Damn it, man. You're getting me riled. Just can't wait to go now, just listening to all this.
Oh, I know. Yeah. So what's also going to be interesting is for a guy like a Jung-Hoo Lee, who came over from the KBO, did not play a whole lot because he was injured, and when he didn't play to the standard that the Giants were looking for. If he's able to take another step forward, I think that's going to really help this offense. But as you had mentioned, there's a lot of swing and miss with San Francisco looking for these guys, and Adames is going to be another one of those guys that's going to have a lot of swing and miss to his game. So there's some good bats on here. There's still not that superstar bat, meaning that guy that's going to put up a really high 850 plus OPS. Even Matt Chapman with what he did last season, 790. Willy Adames was under 800 with his
really?
OPS.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm talking about there. Then when you look at the OPS, so 790 OPS for Matt Chapman with a strikeout rate of what?
Strikeout rate was 24.5%.
That's not as bad as I thought it was. I was going to say 30% or above, so I'm a little off on that.
Yeah,
so that's actually quite a bit better than I thought it was.
Yeah, it's a little bit better, and then there's some warning signs, potentially some regression for a guy who did perform well for them last year, like a Tyler Fitzgerald. Could be another younger guy, might not be able to have the exact same level of performance that he had last year. we'll have to see what he's able to do. There's some good pieces that are really going to help prevent a lot of runs. Their starting rotation is, or at least they have a couple of those guys that you don't necessarily know how they're going to perform. There's been a little bit of ups and downs in them, particularly with guys like a Robbie Ray and a Justin Verlander. Now, I get it. Justin Verlander, former Astro, also former Tiger, and some player that I watched growing up quite a bit. He's not, at this point, the same pitcher that he was during this prime, unless things completely turn around for him in San Diego. But they still have Logan Webb at the top of that rotation. They still have a Jordan Hicks, a Kyle Harrison. They still have some options.
Yeah.
It's just a little
dangerous.
bit outside of Logan Webb. It's a little bit of questions of what they're able to do, what they're going to be able to perform on the starting pitching side. Really good number one, and they've got some good pieces offensively. They also have some decent arms out of the bullpen that they can go ahead and throw out there that perform pretty well, especially at the back end of that bullpen. But you don't know exactly what you're going to get with San Diego. A little bit of unpredictability of how they're going to be able to perform.
Yeah. They're a team that can beat you like 17-0, right? And then turn around the next game or the whole series. And this is in, I believe, Korean. I don't 10,000 in Korean. Many South Korea Dodgers fan. This is a super chat. Thank you so much. And I do apologize. I can't read. I don't know how to read Korean. So maybe I can. Let me see if I can do this right here. Give me just a second here, Austin.
Yeah, do you want me to read the super chat while you're doing that?
Yes, read that super chat.
Yeah, first off, thank you so much. I don't know how to pronounce the name. Casey's working on that. Many South Korean Dodgers fans think Dodgers have the best roster, but little makeup for Sasaki, Scott, Luis, Robert, and CT3, Alman, Brazier, Grove trade, or out then perfect team. So he wants to see a Roki Sasaki, a Tanner Scott, a Luis Robert come in to this team, and then a couple of guys just mentioned that could be in replacement of to make this team just that much better. Yeah, I would agree with a lot of that statement, as particularly with the Dodgers having, at least right now, the best roster in the game of baseball, or particularly in the National League, starting with the National League West. We'll get into some of the other teams that are in the National League just to kind of talk through a little bit more baseball with all of you. But adding a couple of more players certainly does not hurt, and especially if you want to make this roster as airtight as you possibly can. Always looking to upgrade talent is a good thing. Now, what is the correct talent to be able to upgrade? I think you have identified a couple of players that the Dodgers would be interested. They're very interested in Roki Sasaki. We'll see if he signs with LA. They're interested in a Tanner Scott. We'll see if the Dodgers are willing to push past the limits that they've put on themselves in relief pitchers over the recent years. They typically do not sign relievers to longer term deals because they're a little bit more volatile. And then Luis Roberts, it depends on the cost in order to get him, and if they like the profile of type of player that he is. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I also get the fit with the Dodgers not necessarily having 100% answer in center field.
Yeah. Our answer here is Rocker. That is the name of the super chat. Thank you so much for that wonderful super chat and that wonderful comment. That is absolutely awesome. And yes, the Dodgers do, I think, still have a couple of moves that they can make, and that would definitely airtight things and, take a roster that I think as we're looking through this, I think the Dodgers, I mentioned Austin, they have the best three pitchers, right? They probably have the best three hitters too, don't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So I think it's very clear the Dodgers easily have the best roster in the NL West, easily, right? And then they probably have the best. We're going to compare them kind of maybe to the Phillies a little bit, and then the Mets, and then the Braves. So yes, so the Dodgers already probably have the best roster in baseball. Definitely have the best roster in the NL West, which is going to be one of the best divisions in all of baseball, and still have room to add superstars. I mean, I consider Tanner Scott a superstar. I consider Roki Sasaki a superstar in the sense that he's like, so when I say superstar, what I mean, like Jack Flaherty was a superstar at the trade deadline. Not necessarily because he's a superstar pitcher, but because he was the superstar guy that was available at that time, right? at that time, right? So Roki Sasaki is the superstar grab right now. If you're the Giants and you want to go out and get the best free agent pitcher, starting pitcher available in free agency right now, who would that be?
Can you repeat that one more time?
If you're the Giants or the Padres and you want to go out and get the best available starting pitcher, not via trade, who would that? It'd be Roki Sasaki. It'd be Roki Sasaki, right?
Yeah, it would be Sasaki, right?
So that's kind of why I put him in that category. So it's amazing to think the Dodgers have probably definitely the best roster in the NL West, probably the best roster in baseball, and still have room to go get multiple superstars, right? That's amazing to think about.
Oh, yeah. It's an absolute blessing to be able to be in this type of situation as a fan of this organization. They're pushing all the right buttons right now, and they have an avenue going forward that's going to give them an optimal opportunity to build a dynasty. That's fun to watch.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Okay, so the NL West, are you convinced, Austin, after you've gone through all this, are the Dodgers the clear-cut best roster?
They are the best roster at this point, yes.
You're not saying clear-cut?
I'm saying they're the best roster right now. It's probably clear-cut. I think there's some other good teams that are on there. But like Arizona, I think has a really good team, or at least the paper. Yes. And they're gonna win a lot of games during this upcoming season. San Diego's always dangerous. San Francisco, they have some good players on it, but I think the Dodgers clearly have the best roster at this point, comparing all of those different teams.
So I keep hearing the big competition for the Dodgers in the National League is going to be the Mets.
It's going to be, it's going to be
true?
Interesting.
Are they the second best team in the National League?
Who knows at this point?
Well, understood, but just looking at it on roster from a I'm getting with my statistician. You're going through all the metrics of this. I want your opinion. I'm asking your opinion on this.
Yes, I know. And they've added some players. They've added a Juan Soto, which is the biggest headline, and he is one of the best players in the game of baseball. I know there is a lot of different opinions that Dodgers fans had as far as whether they wanted Juan Soto on the Dodgers. I think that was more of a Juan Soto on the Dodgers specific, whether you had questions about that. The truth is, as far as a baseball player, especially as a hitter, particularly as a hitter, he's one of the best pure hitters in the game of baseball. You combine him and a Francisco Lindor, and that is one of the best 1-2 combinations in the game of baseball, if not the best 1-2 combination in the game of baseball.
Lindor had a terrible series against the Dodgers, didn't he?
I'm aware of that, but
the Dodgers got lucky there. I didn't mean that he's not a good player. I'm just saying that was a very fortunate situation for the Dodgers.
Yes. You look at
because he got a great series the series before.
Yes. You look at last year, Francisco Lindor put up 7.8 WAR. Juan Soto
he was that good?
Defensively, he was one of the best defensive shortstops in the game of baseball. Francisco Lindor is phenomenal.
I know he's good, but I know he's that good. Wow.
Oh, he's on a path to probably being a future Hall of Famer with the numbers that he's putting up, continuing to put up. And then Juan Soto last year put up 8.1 WAR. This is according to FanGraphs. You put those guys back to back at the top of the lineup. We saw what the Yankees offense was able to do last year when they had a 1-2 combination of Judge and Soto. Not saying that Lindor is Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge is a significantly better hitter than Francisco Lindor, but those guys were able to help carry that offense. Better hitter and more dangerous. Aaron Judge put up like a 200-something WRC plus over the past couple of seasons. It's ridiculous what he's been able to do. Unbelievable.
All because of the teacher man, right?
Yeah. So those two guys are really good. The rest of the offense is solid. I wouldn't call them necessarily the most dangerous offense out there. Mark Vientos had a good season.
It's top heavy, man. We said that even in the playoffs. I mean, it's like you get past the first 4 or 5 guys, and there's like innings that you take off. It's like, I mean, you get to the bottom of the lineup, and you can have some pretty easy innings if you execute properly.
Vientos put up a 837 OPS last year. That's really
hit solid. The Dodgers well,
Brandon Nimmo's still a solid player, and then you have a couple of other guys that are down later on the offense. But if you look at the bottom of the lineup, currently projected as Brett Beatty and Jose Siri. Siri being a really good defensive center fielder that's going to help out that pitching staff, but had a 78 WRC plus last season. And then Brett Beatty had an 83 WRC plus.
They're not good at the bottom.
Yeah,
Like for the last 5 spots are not good.
It starts to taper off a little bit at the bottom. They still have some young players that are trying to help fill in that role, but they have a little bit more to prove in order to get that to that point. And then you look at their pitching side, they're relying a little bit on some guys that are solid, that had some good seasons, but I wouldn't call their starting rotation necessarily ultra scary. It's a Sean
in the
Manaea.
NL West. Where would their starting rotation? Where would they be in the pecking order?
It would be honestly probably 4th.
Yeah, right. And then their kryptonite is they're not really good at the starting pitching. This is how the Dodgers beat them, by the way. Mm-hmm. They're not very good in the starting pitching, and then they fall off the face of the earth after about Mark Vientos. I mean, that's literally how the Dodgers beat them.
Yeah, it's Sean Manaea.
And then if Lindor doesn't have a good game that day. Of course, now they have Soto that helps. Of course, they had Alonso last year too, though. But Soto is a better hitter than Alonso, no doubt about that. But so if Lindor doesn't have a good series, and then you get all of the guys 5 through 9 out like you should because they're not very good there, and then you exploit their starting pitching like the Dodgers absolutely did. That was like the most stress-free part of the whole playoffs for me because they had so many holes in their game.
Yes. Now, I will say this. They still have a hole. I don't think they want to do Brett Beatty at third base, meaning that I think that their plan or what they're hoping to have happen is either sign a Pete Alonso or potentially an Alex Bregman to be able to bring in and help that offense out a little bit. So I think this offense is incomplete. I think it's probably going to get better, but still, I think it's, at least at this moment, based on the current evaluation that we have, very much top heavy. And it's good that they have, for them, that they have 2 of the better players in the game of baseball. There just isn't quite as much depth in that lineup that we see from a team like the Dodgers. Still, it's got some solid players. And then starting pitching side.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I got to get to this comment. One thing that Vin 1988 was the Gibby year, right? Mm-hmm. Vin Scully, obviously. One thing that Vin 1988 says you're overlooking is that the Giants' defense is horrible, okay? Although I think Adames and Chapman are going to be pretty good on the left side of that infield.
Yes, they are.
Okay. But that they suck eggs. I will totally agree with that, right? And that comment is brought to you by Farmer John's. Okay, you probably can't even remember where you're at after that. That's A+ stuff right there, Vin 1988. Plus the handle, that handle right there, that might be the best handle in all of social media.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. Yeah, I just don't know how to respond to that. Yeah. So
are the Cubs better than the Milwaukee, or who's better between those two? Are the Cubs a threat?
Okay, so that's taking a whole different direction. That's going into the National League Central Division. That's going to be a fun division to watch.
It is.
I don't think Chicago's got some good players on it, and they've added a little bit to that roster, especially with the addition of Kyle Tucker. Long term, I don't know how that's going to fit if they don't re-sign a Kyle Tucker. One of the guys that they traded away, Cam Smith, got to see in South Bend this first week when he was there, when Great Lakes was there.
Yeah.
And holy cow, that kid's really good. And so they traded away a good piece for that. I don't know exactly how that's going to do. I wouldn't anticipate the teams from the Central being able to match up completely with the Dodgers. Milwaukee's got a really good young core that they're growing up, and they continue to add talent. And one of the guys, you talk about them trading away at Devin Williams. I'm telling you right now, Craig Yoho coming up through their system is
100%.
legit. He had like a
100%,
almost a 50% strikeout percentage through some of his minor league numbers, and I got to see him in
I agree
Wisconsin. He's nuts, man. So they're going to continue to develop bullpen pieces, and you talk about investing in young bats. They're one of those teams that is able to invest in a lot of those young bats right now. So they're going to continue to develop that. I just don't know if they have the superstar type talent at this point to be able to compete during the postseason series with a team like the Dodgers, or at least if you were to play postseason series over and over again, I don't think Milwaukee would be able to do that. Chicago has a little bit more of that star power. They have some good players on that team that they're able to do. So that's going to be a fun race during that National League Central to see those teams go up. You even bring in a team like a Cincinnati who has just added a Gavin Lux. They have some fun players on that roster. Ellie, of course, Matt McClain is finally coming back from injury. You add those guys with a Gavin Lux. They have Hunter Green. They've got some good players on that roster. It's going to be a fun battle with that National League Central Division to see how that shapes out.
Yeah. So, okay. So I think it's kind of just, without diving into it, I think people think like it's in the National League, it's the Dodgers and the Mets, and then maybe the Phillies, maybe the Braves. So can the Phillies and the Braves can they fill out a roster that can compete with the Mets?
I will say those are two of more of the teams that I'm a little bit more concerned about. Phillies and the Mets. One will start, Phillies and the Braves, I should say. I'm still concerned about the Mets, but not until they add somebody else to make that roster a little bit more deep. They still have some really good players, but the Dodgers showed that they have the ability to combat two superstar players during a series with what they did during the series with the Yankees this past season. When you're talking about a team like Atlanta vastly underperformed expectations during this last season.
They were injured, though.
They very much were injured, and that played a absolute huge part. But you go from the 2023 Braves, which statistically, if you look at Major League Baseball, historically had one of the top 5 to 10 offenses in the game of baseball history, OPS plus wise. It was unbelievable what they were able to do. Last year, their offense went back down to about league average. And they haven't
Is that
made
because of injury, though?
That very much is because of injury, and they have been absolutely ravaged by a lot of injuries that have taken place, with an Acuna who got injured, with a Spencer Strider who got injured. A lot of players got injured. So if they're able to come back, be healthy, and be the type of players that they were previously, had shown, this offense could take a rebound back a little bit closer to what they were during the 2023 season. That offense for Atlanta was incredibly dangerous, and they still have a lot of those same players on this roster that are just going to need to step up and become those type of players that they were. They weren't those players last year. Will they become those players during this upcoming season is going to determine how well Atlanta is going to do. And then pitching wise, are you going to get the same level of production from the Cy Young Award winner, a Chris Sale? I don't know if they're going to get the exact same level of production.
No Max Fried, right?
They have no Max Fried, which means you're going to be relying on a little bit more of the guys that are younger that you haven't relied upon in the past. How are those guys going to step up and perform during this upcoming season? It's going to also be another question to see if they're able to take that step. They are dangerous, and they have a lot of potential offensively based on what they've done in the past, but they have a lot to prove during the upcoming season. And then Philadelphia, they have a lot of talent as well. The team's led.
Well, and they have experience, and they have guys that know how to win in big situations.
They absolutely
That's the scariest part of them.
Yes, they are perhaps the most scary team out of the bunch with the offense.
And the Dodgers played like crap against them last year. I am totally on, who is it right here? Chilltown All-Star, where just super glad the Mets beat them. I mean, I think a lot of it's matchups. I don't know if the Dodgers matched up as well as with the Phillies as they did the holes that the Mets had, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And
it's like in the 90s. You don't remember this, but for those of you out there from the NFL, you remember this. It seemed like the Dallas Cowboys could never beat the 49ers, and then the 49ers could never beat the Packers, and then the Packers couldn't beat the Cowboys. And so whoever beat it, so like if it ended up being Dallas and San Francisco would win the Super Bowl. If it ended up being Dallas and Green Bay, then Dallas would win the Super Bowl. If it ended up being Green Bay and San Francisco, then Green Bay would win the Super Bowl. So I totally agree with Chilltown All-Star. I think the Phillies are the absolute worst matchup in the National League for the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Because of all that experience. They will not be scared of that Dodgers roster.
They have a lot of experience offensively. They have some really good players. Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber are really good players to add into there. They were hoping for a little bit more offensively, although he was still really solid last year.
From who?
JT Realmuto.
Realmuto.
They have some guys that can go out there and perform. They did sign Max Kepler to be part of the lineup. So he's one of those guys that we potentially looked at as an option. So they have a lot of different guys, different options, and a lot of guys that have worked together for years who went to a World Series during 2022. They also added to their starting pitching, which already was really solid. They got Jesus Luzardo from Miami.
Who had a terrible year last year,
Who had a terrible year, but right now he's slotted as their number 5 starter. Their top 4 are Zach Wheeler, Christopher Sanchez, who put up 4.7 WAR as a pitcher last year, really broke out for them. They have an Aaron Nola as a number 3 starter, and then Ranger Suarez, who's been part of that rotation for quite a while.
Nola is their number 3?
Nola is their number 3, yes.
Wow.
Now, their bullpen is a little bit shaky at this moment.
Who's the number 1?
Their number 1 is Zach Wheeler, who put up 5 WAR.
Yeah, that's who Chilton All-Star just mentioned, Zach Wheeler.
Yes, their starting rotation is one of the best in the game of baseball.
Yeah,
and it when you combine a really solid starting pitching rotation with the experience that they have offensively and some of the superstar type players and players that know they don't have a whole lot of time to make this work. Some of their players are starting to get a little bit older. A lot of these guys are starting to get to 32, 33 years old. Yeah. They're starting to get to that point where, okay, the window might slowly be starting to close for Philadelphia, which could lead to a little bit more desperation. And especially with the way them getting eliminated last year, with them being one of the favorites to potentially make it to the World Series, they're going to be extremely hungry in 2025, and they're going to be one of the, if not the most dangerous team for the Dodgers and wanting the Dodgers to go back to back, because Philadelphia has not during this run gotten a World Series championship, and they desperately want to get one while they still can.
Absolutely. And going through this entire list, we've talked about the Mets, we've talked about Philadelphia, we've talked about the Braves, we've talked about everybody in the NL West, we've talked about the NL Central. We didn't talk about the Cardinals because they kind of remind me of the Giants. It's like I don't know what the hell they are. Right? I don't even know what they're doing right now, right? Yeah. And so, I mean, they're the Cardinals. They're one of the most. I mean, they're an organization that's very proud. They're just as proud as the Dodgers. I mean, I promise you that. Yeah. That's one of the closest teams to where I live, and there's a lot of Cardinals fans around here, and that's a great fan base. They will not deal with losing for very long. So I never count the Cardinals out, but it does not look good for them this year. So we've talked about the NL Central. We've talked about all of the NL West. We've talked ad nauseum the Dodgers 40-man roster and 26-man roster. So going through all this, I'm going to ask you one more time again, playing it through your head as you went through all this, is the Dodgers roster actually that much better than everybody else, more than you thought, or is it better than everybody else, less than you thought after going through this?
It is about as much as I thought it was. Yeah, you compare it to some of the other rosters.
How much? A scale of 1 to 10, how much better is the Dodgers roster than everybody else?
I have full confidence that the Dodgers have the best roster right now. Now, what that gap is...
I'm trying to pin you down to like a specific number. You're just not taking the bait.
Oh, I know. I'm not taking the bait.
You're getting too old on. You're growing up on me right in front of my own eyes, man.
Yeah, I know. I'm not going to take that bait. No. No, I think you look at some other teams. They have a lot of talent, and they've added a lot. Philadelphia, Arizona have really good rotations that are deep, that can beat teams during postseason series, and both of them have offenses that have a lot of potential, a lot of growth. Other teams have superstar type talent or a roster filled with players that underperformed expectations going into last year. You have other teams that have played the Dodgers incredibly tough, incredibly well. And then you have a couple of wild cards of teams out in the National League Central who, if you take any short series, you take a 5-game series, you take a 7-game series, you honestly don't necessarily know what's going to happen, and sometimes the best team doesn't always win those type of series. So there's a lot of competition, a lot of talent for the Dodgers to go up against. I'm still confident, if everyone is healthy, that the Dodgers have the best roster right now in the National League and in the American League as well, just based on of the power dynamics of American and National League that appear to be there right now.
Yeah. And the National League is better than the American League, you think?
I would say so right now. Yeah, I think.
Do the Yankees have a better roster than anybody we talked about tonight, not named the Dodgers?
Not named the Dodgers. Yeah, I would say they would probably have a better roster than San Francisco. I would say they're probably a better roster.
Where would they finish in the NL West? If everything worked out perfectly.
If everything worked out perfectly on paper, that's a really good question. Probably
are they
second.
better than the Diamondbacks?
I would probably say so. It would be fairly close though, and I won't be 100% confident in that answer.
Yeah. Hey, we have another super chat from Vin1988, my favorite social media handle. All joking aside, I love your show, guys. My love for the Dodgers is slightly more than my hate for the Giants. That's a pretty good ratio. That reminds me of that. We always talk about the ISO and the strikeout percentage.
Yeah.
Hey, it's one thing to hit a lot of home runs, but if you also strike out, then it's not necessarily about how many home runs or how many strikeouts you have. It's about the balance between the two, right? So that love for the Dodgers and hate for the Giants, it's that balance right there. But you always love the Dodgers just a little bit more, right?
Oh, I know. And especially with me not being out in Southern California, I don't have the full true picture of the Dodgers and Giants rivalry, especially with the Dodgers just being that much better than Giants at this point. But you can still tell there is a fierce rivalry between Dodgers and Giants. That's always going to be
started
there.
Back in New York, by the way. Yeah, all the way back.
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's dive back into this just for a minute. And we've been going on for about an hour here talking about all the other teams, which is a refreshing kind of change to the roster talk we've been having seemingly all off season. But the Gavin Lux trade, we have a comment on that from Carlos Garcia. This is another example of the Dodgers playing chess. This was an A-plus trade. And I know on the surface people are going to go, you mean you got an outfielder, Mike Sirota, who might start an A-ball next year, and then a draft pick to be named later, right? Well, that's not just a draft pick to be named later. That's a draft pick that's going to be a higher slot than any other draft pick the Dodgers have usually in any other draft. And we have another question here I say that to say that we have another question about how the draft works. So the way the draft works, there's 20 rounds and every team gets to choose at one time in each round. And the way that the picks are chosen is based on how the teams finish, right? So it's meant to create parity because the better teams pick later, which is why the Dodgers don't get usually high draft picks. That's a reason why getting that Comp A competitive balance pick is such a huge deal, because it jumps the Dodgers up there to getting a high draft pick. Remember, this is going to be a draft pick that's likely going to come in a slot that is before when the Dodgers took Dalton Rushing. That's how significant this is. So do not overlook that draft pick for number one. But then number two, this opened up that spot, not on the 40-man. Erase the 40-man. We've got the 40-man figured out. That's the easy one. We're talking about the active roster. What's going to happen when spring training ends, the Dodgers break? Who's on the 26? This cleared up a spot for the future 26-man roster for the Dodgers to go add whoever they want to go add. So this is not Gavin Lux versus Mike Sirota and a compensation round A pick. This is Gavin Lux versus those two, plus whoever they sign with that spot that he cleared on the 26-man roster. And then also it's moving a guy that has no positional versatility in an organization that likes to fix problems with positional versatility. Then it's moving Gavin Lux to Cincinnati, an area of the world where he's going to be much more comfortable. It's going to be a better situation for him. This was a win-win on both sides of this trade. I could not be happier about it. So we had that comment about Carlos Garcia. We also had that question about the MLB draft. We got to kind of put those two together. Yeah. So is there anything here that you disagree with, Austin?
No, I don't disagree with anything. I think you did a good job explaining that situation. Let me provide a little bit additional context based on the previous draft history for the Dodgers, which they have, despite them consistently being towards the top of prospect rankings, consistently putting out incredible talent, which is why they're at the top of prospect rankings, because they have the best development system in minor league baseball, in my opinion. But I think that's been well proven based on the performance that they put out there. They consistently don't have guys that are drafted towards the top of the draft because they go out and spend a lot of money on free agency. Let's go over the past couple of seasons, which for this draft pick that they're going to get for Gavin Lux, it's going to be right now, currently the 37th overall pick
that's what we've been
might
saying the
go
whole
back
time.
until about the 40th pick, which means the Dodgers will have about 2 picks that are around the 40th pick, which gives you a lot of additional bonus money that you can use in the draft. What I want to go through is, and this is something that
explain that part of it. Explain that part of it. The bonus money in the draft.
In the draft with Major League Baseball works a little bit different. Each team, based on the spots where they're picking in the draft, get bonus pool money, get money that is attached to each draft pick that they get. So, like the number 1 overall pick in the Major League Baseball draft is worth $8-9 million. It's not just you get to pick one player, you get to pick the best player in the country, but you get a certain amount of money that you get to use to pay those certain players for the draft
to make sure you get them signed with a bonus.
Make sure that you get them signed. And so with each draft pick that you get a certain bonus pool money. So if the Dodgers are missing, even if they're missing like a second or a 4th round draft pick, they're losing some of their bonus pool money that they're able to get to go ahead and acquire additional draft prospects,
it's a double whammy.
which could be used towards one player at, let's say, the 1st round, the 2nd round, whatever, or it could be used later in the draft to sign guys who they might view as high school players that are young and upcoming that they need to give a little bit more to convince them, instead of going to college, to sign with the Dodgers. So not only does the 37th overall draft pick provide them with another additional draft pick that they can get, it increases their bonus pool money, which they could potentially spread out a little bit more throughout the course of the draft and get several more of those players to potentially be major league players for the Dodgers. It provides them with more optionality, which this draft pick, most of the time, major league teams are not allowed to trade draft picks. The ones that they are allowed to trade for is what is called a competitive balance pick, which some teams that aren't performing as well and don't have the financial resources that the Dodgers have get extra draft picks from what the Dodgers. That's to try to balance out some of the competitive nature of the game of baseball.
So the round A the Dodgers are in between 1st and the 2nd round.
Yes.
And it's a maximum of 20. So it's the 10 either smallest revenue or the 10 worst records from the previous season. They get competitive picks in between the 1st and 2nd round, and then in between the 2nd and 3rd round. Now, keep in mind, sometimes they're crossovers in those two criteria, meaning one of the 10 smallest market teams could also have one of the 10 worst records, and so that's still just one team. So it's upwards. It could be as many as 20 teams, but it's usually like 12, 13, 14 teams that get a pick in these competitive balance rounds. The competitive balance round A that the Dodgers got is between the 1st and 2nd round. So it's I mean, it's not a 1st rounder, but it's better than a 2nd rounder. That's better than the Dodgers normally get. Round B that the Dodgers got Clayton Beeter in, who's with the Yankees now. He was round B. That's between the 2nd and 3rd round.
Yes. So let's go through a little bit of past history. Dodgers draft, and not necessarily the players that they drafted, although I'll mention a couple of those players in just a little bit, but the spots in which the Dodgers were able to pick different players. So we'll start backwards. We'll start from 2024, work our way back to about 2015. 2024, their first draft pick was the 23rd overall draft pick in the 1st round. They did not have a 2nd round pick, so their next pick wasn't until 98th overall. They were also missing a 5th round draft pick, so they missed out on the 2nd and 5th round draft picks because of signings that they have. Those are 2 prime spots in which they've gotten some really good players in the 2nd round and the 5th round. So they missed out on some of that. When you're talking a little bit later, they had their 1st and 2nd round pick during the 2023 season, number 36 and number 60, in which case they got Kenny George and Jake Geloff. Talk about 2022. Their first pick was Dalton Rushing at 40. They did not pick again until 105.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes. You go back to 2021. They had their 1st round pick at 29. They did not draft anybody in the 2nd round.
Right.
Back in 2020, they had a 1st, and then they had competitive. You mentioned a kind of competitive balance B picks. So they had 2. In which case, that draft, the 2020 draft, really good draft for them. That's where they drafted Bobby Miller, Landon Knack, Clayton Beeter, who is in the Yankees organization, and a Gavin Stone. All
Carson
of those
Taylor, too, who's with the Phillies
Yes,
now.
Carson Taylor is another one of those guys who got drafted. You go back, the last time the Dodgers had anywhere close to the type of draft picks that they had, that they're going to have this upcoming season, is the 2019 year, where they were able to draft at the 25th and 31st election. Now, this is the year where they did miss out on a Gunnar Henderson. That is one of those things that
Cody Hosey was their first pick.
Yes, not only did the Dodgers miss out on Gunnar Henderson, but there's 28 other teams that missed out on him. Baltimore,
you can't expect the Dodgers to be perfect. I mean, it just is what it is.
Yes, the Dodgers missed out on him. Super talented player. They drafted Cody Hosey, still working his way up through the minor leagues, but they also drafted Michael Busch. And Michael Busch is having a really solid career with the Chicago Cubs. Also allowed them to get a couple of other key pieces in Zaire Hope and a Jackson Ferris. That was the last time they got anywhere close to these two type of picks. I got a couple more years because I want to prove a point a little bit later down the line. So stick with me for this. 2018, they did not have a first round pick. Their first pick was number 68. Back in
what year was that?
That was 2018. 2018,
their first pick was what?
No, was number 68 overall in the second round. Go back to 2017, they had a first and second round. Their first one was number 23, then 62. Then you go back to 2016, which 2016 was a historic
big one,
draft.
Position player wise, yeah.
Historic draft for the Dodgers, in which case they had the 20th and 32nd pick. And they also had the number 36 pick. Their first two picks were Gavin Lux and Will Smith. Now, you might say Gavin Lux didn't live up necessarily to the potential that you might have placed on him, but when you're drafting players, it is even rare to find a player that will put up 7.6 WAR for you. And they were able to get that. And obviously, Will Smith, they were able to get that type of talent. Now, their picks are going to be a little bit later. They're, instead of being around 20 and 32, they're going to be around 40-ish. But you're going to have more access to those type of players, or a player that it has the potential to be at that caliber, which is something that the Dodgers have rarely over the past couple of seasons, the past decade or so, have not had the opportunity to be able to draft. They either are missing out on a first round pick, a second round pick, or some other pick because of the money that they've spent in free agency that has not allowed them to have the bonus pool money to be able to necessarily go after the best players in the game of baseball in the draft because they have been one of the better teams in the game of baseball. And it's because of that they draft usually a little bit later. So getting this extra pick allows them a little bit more flexibility to go out and get some of the players that they really, really like. Doesn't mean that they're going to be the best players in the draft. Usually those players, or at least they should be, drafted at the top of the draft, but it provides them more flexibility to be able to do that. Adds in a Mike Sirota and creates additional roster flexibility on their major league roster, which I think is really important for the Dodgers right now, especially with a player that did not have positional versatility that Gavin Lux didn't have. And especially when you have questions at Mookie Betts at shortstop, you got to move him somewhere. Corner outfielders are plugged in right now, which means that if the Mookie Betts at shortstop experience doesn't work out, they're not screwed and stuck with a Gavin Lux still, who would just sit on the bench or be down in Oklahoma State.
That was my biggest concern.
Yes.
Was that the Mookie Betts thing doesn't work out. He moves to second now. What with Gavin Lux, like in June? That was my biggest concern there. I'm so relieved that the Dodgers figured that out. So, the Gavin Lux deal was definitely an A-plus trade. The draft pick that they're getting back, as you mentioned, just from a historical context, is very, very, very significant. Now, it doesn't mean it will have to be. I mean, you can miss on guys. There's no doubt about that. Nothing is perfect. We've seen that. But this is very significant. So here's just to kind of wrap up what we talked about tonight. We've gone over the best rosters in the National League. We do think that clearly the National League is better than the American League. So here's another thing, too. Like the Mets added Juan Soto. Great. Okay, that helps them. Yep. But the contract is stupid, right? We've talked about, hey, the Padres are a threat to the Dodgers, but they have like 5 contracts that are stupid, right? So here's the other part of this that is just the chess piece to the Dodgers. not only do they have currently clearly the best roster in baseball, they also have the best economic situation in terms of the types of contracts that they have awarded. I mean, they're paying Shohei Ohtani $70 million a year, right? Whatever it is deferred. And they just came out today that he's like making that by himself in 1 year's worth of earnings. So even if like you don't get 10 years out of him or whatever, literally you're breaking even with Shohei Ohtani and then winning World Series and gaining the earnings from being a World Series champion on top of breaking even over just with the contract of Shohei Ohtani. So not only have the Dodgers built the most talented roster, they've also built the smartest economic roster. It's a masterpiece on playing chess when it comes to building rosters, which is why when I hear people criticize the front office, which isn't very often, it just makes me shake my head like, what in the world are you talking about, right?
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah. When the initial Shohei Ohtani contract of 10 years, $700 million broke, I think we were all in shock because that is way higher than the game of baseball had ever seen. Yet because of the deferred money and because of the revenue that he's able to bring in, it has been an absolute boom economically for the Dodgers. And you talk about the different types of players that the Dodgers go out and target and get. Yes, they have a lot of players that are locked up to several year deals, but they are the players that the Dodgers want to go out and get. They go out and get a lot of these superstar type players then they sign those players to the long-term deals that they want and get them on some pretty good team-friendly deals, or at least on terms of which the Dodgers are comfortable with. They built a team that is fit to go ahead and perform year after year, and yet they go out and pay for the superstar players that they actually want and that are going to help this team. And so it's just amazing to see the roster and how they're able to formulate all of those different pieces, put these pieces of the puzzle together, and you feel confident about their ability and how these players are going to translate long term for the most part, or at least more confident in these players than perhaps some of the other players that are on, or some of the other contracts that are on some other rosters.
Yeah. There's a lot of stupid people that have a lot of money that don't turn that money into success at every venue of life, whether it be sports or whatever it may be. So just because you have money doesn't mean you're going to be what the Dodgers are, which is right now the best and most talented roster, the smartest contracts, and still year in and year out one of the best farm systems. I mean, every part of this is covered. And then also to add on top of that, and this kind of ties into all of those aspects, what all those aspects produce is a system that's sustainable. So not only do you have this system that's better in every aspect than everybody else, it's also going to be that way for like ever. I mean, it's not, they've got it set up to where this is not something like the Padres, like you mentioned, the Padres and Phillies. Yes, there is a window with Mookie and Freddie and those guys, but okay, so Mookie and Freddie age out a little bit, so you still have Shohei Ohtani and you go replace Max Muncy with the best third baseman, and maybe you move or whoever, maybe you move Will Smith to third base and go get the best, whatever it may be. The Dodgers have shown, here's another thing they've done, like whenever the market got saturated, whenever they added the extra wild card for the July trade deadline, we said at the time the Dodgers will pivot because they will stop relying on the trade deadline. They will do all their work in the offseason because everything's overpriced at the trade deadline, because the buyers and sellers aren't as well defined because everybody's so close to that last wild card spot. Now, the Dodgers did have a good trade deadline last year, but they didn't go into the season wanting to rely on it. And they're showing you in this offseason, they're trying to take care of all their issues to where they can go get once at the trade deadline and not have to fulfill needs. Because if you're having to fulfill needs, we say this all the time, here's the difference between a want and a need when it comes to the game of baseball and the economic part of it. To me, okay, a want is somebody that you pay the price that you're willing to pay for, right? A need is somebody that you will pay whatever the hell you have to pay to get them. That's the difference. And so the Dodgers, yes, they will use the trade deadline if they need, but they want the trade deadline to be fulfilling wants. They want to get all their needs taken care of in the offseason. So they have pivoted there. And so they've shown that they've pivoted from an offense that was all boom and bust, 3 true outcome, 17 runs, 1 game, next game, not to going and getting the Tommy Edmonds and drafting the Kenny Georges and going and getting the Hae-Sung Kims and those kind of guys. They've made that pivot. So what in the world have they shown to tell you, even if Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman age out a little bit, what have they shown you to say that they won't pivot away from that and figure out a way around that situation too? So it's also the way that they don't have an ego and they continue to pivot whenever they need to stay on top of the game. It's super impressive.
Yep, and I think they've, in free agency particular, or the guys that they've extended extensions to, like you mentioned, Mookie Betts, I think they've given most of those contracts have been to the correct players, and they've been to the players that are the superstar level players that aren't going to have as steep of a drop off, or they're not projected to have as steep of a drop off. They could have given out a big contract to a guy like a Willy Adames during this offseason. It could have been the right move. We don't know how the future is going to look for Adames, but then they would be locked into that contract for the next 7 seasons, in which case, is he really that superstar level player?
He ain't making money like Ohtani. He ain't making free money. Ohtani's making free money. Willy Adames ain't doing that. So he better produce, right?
Then my point with this is I think the Dodgers have been correct in a lot of their decisions 100%. That they made and the players that they've invested in. Going last year during last offseason, not just Shohei Ohtani, but Yoshi Yamamoto, getting a player that age coming over from Japan for the contract that they were able to give him, which was a long-term contract. But that's because he was so young and you're getting some of the prime years out of him, which you don't typically see from free agent pitchers. You just don't get those type of prime years. They were able to take advantage of that, and there's a couple of opt-outs in his deal. I think they've been smart about how they've gone about. Yes, they've given out a lot of money, just like if any team had as much money or making as much revenue as the Dodgers are, and they were as willing to go out and invest as much as they possibly could into their front office, they would try to make the roster as good as they possibly can. The Dodgers have just made a lot of really good decisions of player acquisition, and I think that's smart, and I think that has to do with a lot with the scouting department. That's got a lot to do with the front office of the Dodgers and the decision process that they're able to make. They know what type of players they want to go out and get, and they know the price of which they're willing to go out and get these players. That price of what the pool that they're able to spend on players has even just that much more increased based on the way Shohei Ohtani's contract is going. And that is just amazing to be able to see, because they're playing with a much larger pool and they're smarter about how they play their pool than most other teams. And they're able to go out and get just about any player that they want.
Okay, so let's button this up. We still have a great crowd in the lobby, so we're going to go here for at least, another couple minutes until we stop running out of comments here in the chat. What a great chat we have. Blue fan says Phillies. Austin forgot Luzardo. No, we mentioned Luzardo being their number 5. That's they just got him. We mentioned him being their number 5 specifically. Yes. So, okay, we had a question here. So we don't like to do top prospects list because it's impossible to compare somebody who's facing low A type competition with somebody who's in double A. We've seen that with Diego Cartaya. We see it all the time. It's just a whole different deal.
Yeah, and you talk about different player interviews coming up.
Yeah.
We also, it's not fair to look those players in the faces and compare each one of those guys from us. So you got to look at it from that perspective as well.
Yeah. I would be able to do that if I felt like it actually was legitimate. So like if I could look at another player and say, well, this is a legitimate evaluation. If you don't like it, get better, right? If I actually felt like I could do that, then I would have no problem with it. But it's completely arbitrary. A lot of times it's people have never even seen these guys play. They're looking at statistics. They're looking at TrackMan. They're looking at this and that. And they're probably not even people that played baseball, right? So it is one of those deals. So those are all the reasons that go into it. And I think we've seen, even like with the Diego Cartaya or whatever it may be, that whatever. Okay. So instead of saying who are the best pitching prospects, I think the best way to look at this is who are the most imminent pitching prospects. So I think at this point, and I talked about this on Clint's show last night, and I appreciated Chuck and Charlie Stokes for the compliments about last night's show. That was a lot of fun. Go check that out over on Real Dodgers. That was super fun. Got to meet Kevin and the crew there. That was good. So I mentioned I think the most imminent pitchers in the Dodgers system are Carlos Duran, who's at the AAA level. He's going to be fully healthy this year. He gained a lot of momentum last year. You forget this is a guy that's been at the top of prospects list. It's just been stop and start because of Tommy John. But he's over all that, and he is a super talented dude. Jared Karros and Jackson Ferris. Those are my three most imminent pitching prospects that have not had their major league debut yet that I think are the closest to the major leagues.
Yeah, I think you're just about right on with a lot of those and your evaluation of those. Those would be the three guys that I would probably be having some of the closer eyes on. There's a couple of other guys that you could potentially look at a little bit. Who would
they be?
Closer down at the bottom. I still am absolutely amazed with what Jose Rodriguez did last year. With his swinging stuff. And
you think MLB next year though? You think he's imminent?
I think he has the possibility to be able to
above any of those three.
I don't necessarily know above. It depends on how his swinging miss stuff is able to translate to Double A. If he's able to get and sustain similar to the swing and miss stuff, which Jose Rodriguez had the best swing and miss stuff, at least statistically wise, result wise last year in the Dodger system last year. He's ended his season at Great Lakes, going to likely start this upcoming season in Double A Tulsa. If that is able to translate in Double A, we've seen guys move quickly.
I think it's like a mix of all of that.
So he's one of those guys that could be
I think
guy
we've worked a lot.
Or especially because he has a little bit of length. If the Dodgers need some length coming out of the bullpen, and they know that at some point they're going to have to add him to the 40-man roster for next season if they want to protect him for a Rule 5 draft. I know he wasn't taken during this previous season. That could be potentially another possibility to be called up. So those would be some of the guys that I'd keep an eye out for.
You said Rodriguez, and who else?
That's the only name that I've mentioned so far.
Yeah, so... Yeah, I would agree. Jose Rodriguez, I think he's a little bit further away than any of those guys, and I don't think it would be in a starting role. I'm kind of sticking here with the starting role.
Sure.
Carlos Duran, I mean, am I off on him that this guy's a lot closer and he's being majorly overlooked by Dodgers fans just because of the fact that he has been injured and maybe they haven't heard a whole lot about him, say in the last couple years because of that injury?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think fans probably remember him from a little while ago, and then because he's been injured,
remember him because it's been a while, right?
Yeah, that could be the case.
Dude, 6'6" with a massive breaking ball, man.
Dude, it's nuts. Yeah, his stuff is legit. So he has all the chances in the world to be and make an impact. Now, it's going to be tough because there's a lot of guys that are going to likely be waiting down in the minor leagues as depth for the Dodgers, and that's going to be the toughest thing, is opportunities to be able to even crack this roster and crack this rotation, because you look at guys that are at the minor league level or projected to be at the minor league level. If they do not add a Tanner Scott and don't add a Roki Sasaki, don't add anybody else, you're still talking about probably Bobby Miller, Landon Knack, Nick Frasso, Justin Robleski, and Ben Kasperius all being down at the minor league level. Then also a Jack Dreyer who's on the 40-man roster. All of those guys would likely have to be jumped over at some point to bring one of these other guys up. So it's going to be tough competition to see some of these guys be able to come up.
It's going to take injury. It's what it's going to take.
It likely is going to take injuries for that to be the case. These guys are incredibly talented. Jackson Ferris had one of the better seasons at the minor league level last year. I got to see a large part of it, and I got to watch on TV his 8 no-hit innings against Cedar Rapids, which was his last outing in Great Lakes. Unbelievable, the growth that he was able to show last year. Carlos Duran's another one of those guys that you mentioned, and Jared Karros. Man, when he's on the mound, it's special watching him go out there and pitch. And it's just going to be right when you see him in Los Angeles pitching for the Los Angeles Dodgers. That's going to feel right, and he's going to feel like a Dodgers pitcher.
Yeah, Jared Karros, I'm telling you, this dude's good.
Yeah, he's good.
He's not going to light up the radar gun. He's going to be 92, 93, 94. He might hit a 5 or a 6 every now and then, but it's going to be that right there. I mean, he's just going to throw sliders underneath the hands of lefties. He's going to locate the ball up in the zone. He's going to play that fastball up in the zone. That one there, he's going to tunnel the slider that we've already seen 2 or 3 different times. Off of that tunnel there, he's going to throw changeups. He's going to throw that spike curveball that breaks basically completely 12-6. And similar to Landon Knack, see how he spotted that away, that spot away? Then he'll take his slider right there. He hit it twice in a row. You're seeing sequencing right here from Jared Karros. 3 times in a row, he just hit that 4-slot fastball on the low and away corner. That's the type of execution that Jared Karros is capable of. That's really just, I mean, that's how good he can be in terms of his execution. And so super excited about him. So I think as far as, go ahead.
I was just going to say this. I mention it just about every single time that I mention Jared Karros, but in case anybody is new here, I got to see Jared Karros in person out-duel Jackson Jobe, who is the top pitching prospect in the game of baseball, not once but twice in a span of the week during the final week of the regular season to eliminate Jackson Jobe's team, the West Michigan Whitecaps. Both Jared Karros and Peter Hubeck were the ones that did that. And I know that's just a short sample size, but you combine that with just the skill sets that he was able to showcase, not just in 2023, in 2024 as well. That breaking ball is nuts. It's legit. All of these things come together, and it spells really good things for Jared Karros, not to mention his father and his pedigree that he has in Los Angeles.
Yeah, and he's just a super cool dude. I just don't see any way, other than injury, I just don't see any way he's not going to hit, man. This is a really good pitcher. So, hey, we've been going on for almost an hour and a half now, Austin. I'm sure Dodgers fans are ready for us to get off the air here and get back to that semifinal game. Ohio State scored with 13 seconds left in the first half to take a 14-7 lead, which is where we're at right now. Buckeyes have the ball on their own 12-yard line, 88 yards away from taking a 2-score lead here. So, hey, we're going to get back to that game here. Any final thoughts? What a great conversation. It's been refreshing to talk about some of the other teams instead of just crunching the Dodgers numbers like we've been doing, right?
Yeah, we like talking about the Dodgers a lot.
We do, yes.
That's been most of our off-season coverage, and rightfully so, with the name of our channel being Dodgers Daily. We should be talking a lot of Dodgers, but there's also teams that play against the Dodgers, and we have to recognize those teams where they're at and compare the Dodgers and potentially try to find different weaknesses or areas where the Dodgers can improve. And I think over the course of the next couple of weeks, the Dodgers probably aren't finished with trying to improve this roster. And that's the amazing part about this. We can take a snapshot in time on January 10th and say, yes, the Dodgers, I believe on paper, are clearly the best team in the National League, but they're not even done right now. And that's going to make this roster just that much more better. They have some pieces, some things that they're going to have to figure out on the 26-man roster, on the 40-man roster in order to make this work. But I don't believe they're done trying to add different players to this roster. They desperately want to go out there and win a World Series. That's what we want. And I still think they are the best team, or at least have the best chances based off of any team over the past
it's baseball.
several years.
Anything can happen.
Yes, over the past several years to go out there and go back-to-back. I think this team just has about as good of a chance as any team has had in recent years.
01, something like that? It
hasn't happened since the Yankees in the late 90s, early 2000s when they had that three-peat. There has not been a back-to-back
99, 2001, I think, is when that happened.
It was 98, 99, and 2000. Because 2001 was Arizona beating
25 years. That's how hard it is to do. And they had an elite roster just like the Dodgers do now, so it's hard to do.
Yeah, it's very hard. But the Dodgers have as good of a chance if they are healthy.
The best chance since then, no doubt.
Yes. Yeah, they are incredibly talented. It's super fun to watch this. All these pieces come together. It should be a fun season, not just for the Dodgers at the major league level, but with some of the additions that they're going to have to the farm system as well. I'm excited to see the progress that a player like Mike Sirota is going to be able to make. I'm excited to see how the Dodgers are able to use their competitive balance A pick that they got from Cincinnati and how they're able to spread around those resources. They just traded Diego Cartaya to Minnesota, so I wish him nothing but the best over there in Minnesota. Hope that he has a ton of success over there. Continue to root for that kid. That kid is a really good kid, and I hope that he has a lot of success. They got a Dominican Summer League pitcher in return. I don't remember exactly what his name is. I apologize for not knowing that. But another one of those guys that's not going to need to be added to the 40-man roster for a little bit. Add some depth, and they clearly see something that they like if they went and made a trade for Minnesota, and could be one of those guys that, oh, who is this guy? And then it turns out to be something really good. Like, for example, last season, during the end of the regular season, Great Lakes, during their last week or so, they had to call up on the Sunday because the game technically didn't count in their playoff run, whether they won and lost. They brought up a guy by the name of Nicholas Cruz from the Complex League. And he turned out to be something amazing, or at least went out there and pitched incredibly well during the game against South Bend, and then during the following week against Dayton. They have some guys that with a lot of talent on that level. Still a lot to prove. Still need to find that consistency. But a guy like that they got in the trade with for Diego Cartaya could be one of those guys that gets called up, and you say, "Huh, I didn't know they still had this level of talents down there at that system." Going to be excited to see, be able to watch that. It's still baseball. Still thinking of everyone who's out there in Southern California, though. Our thoughts and prayers continue to be with you. Please let us know if there's anything that we can do to help.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody out there in the chat. What a wonderful chat this has been. Friday evening, Final Four is going on. You have all the fires. You have all this going on. You guys are absolute rock stars. We can't tell you how much we thank you enough. Again, I'm going to say it again, the best baseball chat in the world, and I will not back down from that. So can't thank you guys enough in the chat. Give yourselves a standing ovation for tonight. And I'm going to leave you with this, Austin. We have another super chat, $5. There are 3 things. There's more than 3 things, but I want you to name 3 things in life that suck. I'm going to say it again. 3 things in life that suck. I'm going to give you 2 of them. Okay. 2 of them are vampires and vacuums. You know what the 3rd thing is in life that sucks?
Well, based on the conversation that we had a little bit earlier tonight, talking about other teams, I'm gonna guess it's another team that somebody is not a big fan of, and based on historic precedents, I'm gonna say the Giants.
Yes, 3 things in life that suck: vampires, vacuums, and the Giants.